My name is Charlotte Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life I believed that if I just stayed quiet long enough, my family would eventually love me the way they loved everyone else. I was wrong. The moment I finally understood that happened at my niece's birthday party. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was wearing a yellow dress she'd picked out herself. She'd spent 20 minutes that morning standing in front of the mirror asking if the bow looked right. She was excited, nervous, hopeful, the kind of hopeful only children know how to be. The party was already underway when my father walked over holding a birthday card. At first, Lily thought it was another gift. She smiled. She thanked him. Then she opened it. Inside, written in large letters, were the words, "Award for the least pretty grandchild." For a second, she just stared at it. Then she read it out loud. The laughter started immediately. My mother laughed first. My older sister Vanessa covered her mouth but couldn't hide her grin. My Uncle Daniel smirked. Even my father looked proud of himself, as if he'd delivered the funniest joke anyone had ever heard. And my daughter simply stood there holding that card. Her smile vanished. Her shoulders dropped. The sparkle disappeared from her eyes. I remember the exact feeling that rushed through me. Not anger. Not at first. It was heartbreak. Because I knew that look. I'd worn it myself growing up. I walked across the yard, took the card from Lily's hands, and ripped it cleanly down the middle. The laughter died instantly. Nobody spoke. I looked around the table. "If this is what passes for humor in this family," I said quietly, "then maybe it's time we stop pretending we're even a family." My mother rolled her eyes. "Of course she did. Charlotte, don't be dramatic." My father shook his head. "It was a joke." "A joke?" I asked. "You humiliated an 8-year-old little girl. She's too sensitive." "No," I replied. "She is surrounded by adults who should know better." Vanessa crossed her arms. Here we go again. Charlotte turning everything into a crisis. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. The dismissal, the blame, the way every problem somehow became my fault. I was preparing to leave when something happened that nobody expected. My grandfather stood up. He was 72 years old. Quiet, reserved. The kind of man who usually stayed out of arguments. For years, he'd watched family gatherings from the sidelines, listening, observing, never interfering. So when he slowly rose from his chair and cleared his throat, the entire yard fell silent. Even the children stopped talking. He looked directly at my parents, then at Vanessa, then at everyone sitting around that table. Enough. One word. That was all it took. My father's face tightened. My grandfather rarely raised his voice. When he did, people listened. Then he looked at me. No, not at me. At Lily. She was standing beside me, clutching a paper plate and trying very hard not to cry. Something shifted in his expression. A sadness I'd never noticed before. "I've watched this for years," he said. "The way you treat Charlotte." He pointed toward my parents. "The way you treat that child." Nobody interrupted. Nobody dared. "You care more about appearances than people." His voice became firmer. "I gave all of you chance after chance. I helped when you needed help. I defended you when nobody else would." He paused. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I'm rewriting my will." The silence became absolute. My house, my land, my savings, everything I own will go to Lily. My father's drink nearly slipped from his hand. My mother froze. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. But he wasn't finished. "Not one dime goes to her grandparents." His eyes locked onto my parents. "Not one dime goes to her aunt." His gaze moved to Vanessa. "Everything goes to the only person in this family who still knows how to be kind." I felt Lily squeeze my hand. She didn't fully understand what was happening. She only knew the adults suddenly looked scared. My grandfather took a breath. "I am done rewarding entitlement." Then he sat back down. And just like that, the party was over. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew how to recover. A few minutes later, Lily wandered back outside, carrying her slice of cake. She sat beside me, leaning her head against my shoulder, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Mom?" "Yeah, sweetheart? Can we light the candles again?" I blinked. "What?" I didn't get to make my wish. My throat tightened. The card hadn't broken her. The cruelty hadn't broken her. She still cared more about birthday candles than revenge. At that moment, I realized something. My daughter was stronger than every adult sitting at that party, and my parents were about to lose far more than money. The party ended quickly after that. People invented excuses. Cars disappeared one by one. Vanessa practically ran to her vehicle. My mother pulled my father aside, whispering frantically. Neither of them even looked at Lily before leaving. My grandfather left quietly. As he passed us, he nodded once. Lily smiled and waved. He smiled back. Nothing else was said, but I knew something enormous had shifted. That night, around 11 o'clock, my phone rang. "Mom," I answered. She didn't even say hello. Is he serious? I closed my eyes. What do you think? Charlotte, this is insane. No. What's insane is making fun of a child. It was harmless. Was it? She ignored the question. What did you tell him? Nothing. You must have said something. I laughed softly. The only thing he saw was exactly what everyone else saw. She became quiet. Then her voice hardened. You made your own family turn against us. No, I said. You did that yourselves. She hung up. 2 days later, Vanessa showed up at Grandpa's house uninvited. She brought her children, brought cookies, brought fake smiles. Grandpa never opened the door. Vanessa stood on Grandpa's porch for almost 20 minutes. Her children shifted behind her, confused and restless, while she kept knocking softly, then harder, then softly again. Grandpa never let her in. By the next morning, the money panic had fully begun. My father called me 4 times in one day. No hello, no apology, just demands. What exactly did he say? When is he changing the will? Did you pressure him? Did you put Lily up to this? I listened until he finally ran out of breath. Then I said, You embarrassed an 8-year-old girl in front of her entire family. That's what happened. He snapped back immediately. That little brat is not getting everything. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, staring at the wall, and realized I wasn't shaking. A year earlier, his anger would have ruined my whole day. This time, it felt like listening to thunder from inside a locked house. Loud, ugly, but unable to reach me. A week later, Grandpa met with his lawyer. It became official. Lily was the sole beneficiary of his estate. His house, his property, his savings, his retirement accounts. Everything. I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know he had already drawn up the documents until he called me afterward and said, It's done. That same week, Vanessa posted a sentimental paragraph online about family being sacred. A friend sent me the screenshot. I laughed once, then deleted it. Because the people who talk loudest about family are sometimes the first ones to destroy it behind closed doors. Then the truth started leaking out. I heard from a cousin that my parents were behind on their mortgage. Years behind, apparently. They had taken loans, assuming Grandpa's estate would eventually rescue them. My father's business had been struggling. My mother had credit card debt hidden under balance transfers and minimum payments. And Grandpa had been helping them quietly for years. A few thousand here. A bridge loan there. A payment made directly to a lender. Enough to keep them floating. Enough to let them pretend they were stable. That stopped the day of Lily's party. No more help. No more quiet checks. No more bailouts disguised as birthday gifts. They spiraled fast. Letters? Voicemails. Angry calls. Sweet calls. Desperate calls. Vanessa even tried using her children to soften him. Nothing worked. Grandpa didn't bend. Instead, he came to our house one afternoon with a small shovel and a young maple tree in the back of his truck. He and Lily planted it in our yard. He never mentioned the will, never mentioned my parents. He just patted the soil around the roots and said, She's going to grow up just fine. By the end of that month, my parents stopped pretending. The first real crack came on a rainy Thursday evening. Someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, my father was standing there alone. No warning. No call. Just that tight, angry jaw I knew too well. I didn't invite him inside. He looked past me into the hallway. Where's Lily? Safe. His eyes narrowed. I want to see my granddaughter. No. He laughed under his breath. You think this is over? You think you've won? If you're here to threaten me, leave. I'm not here for you. Then you're wasting your time. His voice dropped. I want to clear the air with her. She misunderstood the card. I stared at him. She's 8, Dad. Not stupid. His face changed. The mask slipped. You think you're so clever, don't you? Getting close to my father, manipulating him. You don't deserve anything he's giving you. I said nothing. He leaned closer. You've always been the bitter one in this family. I shut the door in his face. He stood outside for almost a full minute. I watched through the curtain until he finally walked away. No regret. No shame. Only resentment. 2 days later, Vanessa sent me a long message. It was full of fake concern. She said she missed Lily. She said children shouldn't be dragged into adult conflict. She said our family was falling apart, and I was the reason. Then she wrote the sentence that made my stomach turn. Grandpa is old, Charlotte. He doesn't know what he's doing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The next morning, Grandpa called. Calm as ever. Vanessa came by again. I closed my eyes. What did she want? My house. I sat down slowly. He told me she had suggested he transfer the property into her name for safekeeping. She claimed I was unstable. She said I was using Lily as a pawn. Grandpa actually chuckled. They never cared about legacy, he said. They cared about what they thought they were owed. That's why they're angry now. I chose someone they can't control. Later that week, I took Lily out for ice cream. She ordered vanilla with rainbow sprinkles and ate it with the seriousness of someone making an important life decision. Halfway through, she looked up at me. Mom, why don't Grandma and Grandpa call anymore? I felt the question land in my chest. I wanted to protect her from the truth, but I also didn't want to teach her that cruelty was love wearing a bad mood. So I said gently, some people don't know how to be kind, even when they're supposed to love you. And that is not your fault. She thought about it, then nodded. Can I get more sprinkles? I smiled. Yes. But that night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried quietly into a towel. Because I understood something I should have understood years earlier. I had spent my whole life trying to earn respect from people who didn't even understand what respect was. I gave them holidays, birthdays, second chances. I swallowed insults. I excused favoritism. I let their cruelty pass as humor. But Lily was not going to grow up like I did. Confused, ashamed, always wondering what she had done wrong. That ended with me. 3 weeks after the party, my parents listed my mother's luxury SUV for sale. The same SUV she used to brag about. The same one Grandpa had helped with 5 years earlier. The same one she parked diagonally in the driveway like a trophy. Now it was on Facebook Marketplace. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. I knew exactly what it meant. They weren't just short on money. They were falling through the floor. Then came the foreclosure notice. My father called in a panic. Against my better judgment, I answered. He said the bank had started proceedings. He swore it was temporary. He said he just needed a little help. Maybe a short-term loan from Grandpa. Just enough to keep them afloat. Talk to him yourself, I said. I tried. And he won't even return my calls. That was when I realized their anger had turned into desperation. The same people who used to laugh when I cried during arguments were now unraveling in public, quietly, pathetically, and no one was rushing to save them. Uncle Daniel stopped returning their calls. Vanessa stayed close only because she was searching for her own angle. A cousin told me Vanessa and my mother had started fighting, each blaming the other for ruining their chances with Grandpa. Lily knew none of this. To her, life was still school, cartoons, library books, and organizing her tiny animal toys by color. Then one night, she left a drawing on my pillow. It was me, her, and Grandpa holding hands beside the little maple tree. Underneath, in shaky letters, she had written, "I'm glad we have our real family." I cried again, but this time, it didn't feel like grief. It felt like release. A few days later, Grandpa asked me to come with him to his lawyer's office. He updated more than the will. Power of attorney, medical directives, account access, emergency contacts, everything. When it was over, he looked at me and said, "This isn't about money, Charlotte. This is about who I trust." That night, my mother sent one message. She didn't ask about Lily. She didn't apologize. She didn't mention the card. She only wrote, "You won't get away with this." No punctuation. No warmth. Just cold bitterness. I didn't reply. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't getting away with anything. I was surviving for once. A week later, they did something I didn't expect. My father filed a petition to have Grandpa declared mentally unfit. They claimed he was confused, manipulated, not in his right mind, easily influenced. Their lawyer attached a note from Vanessa claiming Grandpa forgot names, repeated stories, and couldn't understand legal decisions. None of it was true. It was disgusting. But worse than that, it was dangerous. They weren't only trying to take Lily's future, they were attacking his dignity. When the lawyer called to tell us, Grandpa sat quietly through the entire conversation. Afterward, he looked at me and said, "Bring me the metal box." I knew the one. It had been in his closet for years. Inside were military records, IDs, old letters, estate folders, and documents stacked with the neatness of a man who had survived enough betrayal to keep proof of everything. He opened the box slowly. Then he said, "They think I'm weak." His eyes lifted to mine. "They forgot who I am." A few days after my parents filed their petition, Grandpa went through a full medical evaluation. Not because he doubted himself, because he wanted the truth documented. Psychiatrists, cognitive testing, memory assessments, hours of questions, hours of examinations. I sat beside him through most of it. He never appeared nervous. If anything, he seemed annoyed, as though the entire process was an inconvenience forced upon him by people who should have known better. A week later, the results arrived. The specialist's report was crystal clear. His memory was excellent. His reasoning skills were strong. His judgment was sound. In fact, the doctor wrote that Grandpa's cognitive abilities were significantly above average for a man his age. The petition collapsed before it ever reached a courtroom. When my parents learned they had lost, they exploded. My father sent me a 6-page email. Every paragraph dripped with blame. According to him, I had poisoned the family. I had manipulated Grandpa. I had turned Lily against them. I had always been jealous of Vanessa. This was revenge. Nothing more. The last line stayed with me. "You've made enemies out of your own blood." I read it twice. Then a third time. Enemies. Not daughter. Not granddaughter. Not family. Enemies. That single word revealed more truth than the entire rest of the message. We were never people to them. We were obstacles. Vanessa followed with her own performance. She posted another dramatic message online about betrayal, about money changing people, about selfishness destroying families. She never used my name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew who she meant. But something had changed. This time, people weren't rushing to support her. Most stayed silent, because they had been at that party. They had seen the card. They had watched an 8-year-old child get humiliated while adults laughed. Truth has a strange way of surviving. Eventually, it starts leaking through the cracks. Then came the final family meeting. Grandpa organized it himself. No drama. No theatrics. Just a phone call inviting everyone to his house. Me, Lily, my parents, Vanessa, Uncle Daniel. Everyone assumed it was a reconciliation attempt. A last chance to fix things. I knew better. The moment I saw Grandpa's expression, I knew this wasn't about repair. It was about closure. We gathered in his living room on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Lily sat in the kitchen coloring inside one of Grandpa's old chess scorebooks. She was perfectly happy, unaware of the storm unfolding a few feet away. Grandpa stood in front of us. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then he said, "I know who you are." The room became still. "And I know who's worth protecting." My mother's face immediately tightened. My father shifted forward in his chair. Vanessa looked nervous. For the first time since all of this began, she seemed genuinely uncertain. Grandpa handed each of us a sealed envelope. Mine was heavy. Inside were copies of finalized legal documents, the estate, the trust, the house, the investments, everything. Lily's name appeared throughout the paperwork. I was listed as executor. Every safeguard imaginable had been added. Every challenge anticipated. Every loophole closed. My father's face turned pale as he read. He opened his mouth to speak. Grandpa raised one hand. "No more." The authority in his voice froze everyone. Then he turned toward me. "I want Lily raised in a home where nobody makes her feel small." I couldn't speak. I simply nodded. That was enough. The meeting ended minutes later. No arguments. No negotiations. No second chances. Just finality. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching Grandpa's old chess scorebook against her chest. She looked peaceful, safe, protected. She had no idea her future had just been secured forever. Within 2 months, my parents lost their house. The foreclosure finally went through. They had delayed it for as long as possible. Extensions, appeals, promises, excuses. Nothing worked. No one came to rescue them. Not Uncle Daniel. Not cousins. Not friends. Not Grandpa. Especially not Grandpa. They moved into a small rental across town. Old carpets. Thin walls. Loud pipes. My mother insisted they were downsizing by choice. Nobody believed her. The truth was obvious. The inheritance they had counted on for years was gone. One afternoon, I took Lily to visit Grandpa. By then, they had developed their own routines. Gardening, checkers, reading stories together, an ongoing debate about canned peaches that somehow fascinated both of them. She called him Old G. He pretended to hate it. Secretly, he loved it. That afternoon, I found them sitting beneath the maple tree they had planted months earlier. Grandpa had built a small wooden bench underneath it. Lily sat there reading from a fantasy novel. Grandpa listened, with his eyes closed, smiling. For the first time in years, he looked completely at peace, like a man who had finally put down a burden he'd carried for far too long. That evening, after Lily went inside, he handed me a sealed envelope. "For someday," he said. I asked what was inside. He smiled. "You'll know when it's time." A month later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. No suffering. No hospital. No dramatic final words. He simply went to bed and never woke up. The call came early in the morning. Even though we knew it would happen someday, the loss hit like a physical blow. Lily cried harder than I had ever seen. Then, she disappeared into her room for nearly an hour. When she came out, she was holding a folded letter. At the funeral, she quietly slipped it into Grandpa's jacket pocket. No one asked what she wrote. No one needed to. My parents arrived late. They stood in the back, silent, alone. Nobody approached them. Nobody welcomed them. For the first time in their lives, they couldn't charm their way back into the center of attention. After the funeral, the attorney read the final estate documents. Everything remained exactly as Grandpa intended. Lily inherited everything. I remained executor. Nothing changed. Then the attorney reached the final page. A clause added after the birthday party. One final safeguard. One final lesson. The room went silent as he read it aloud. Any person who challenged the will would immediately become responsible for repaying all financial assistance, forgiven loans, gifted funds, property access, and monetary support previously provided by Grandpa during his lifetime. Retroactively, every dollar, every favor, every bailout, everything. My father's face lost all color. My mother's hands started shaking. Vanessa looked like she might faint. Because they all understood the same thing at exactly the same moment. They couldn't fight. Not legally. Not financially. Not emotionally. They were trapped by their own history. And Grandpa knew it. It was brilliant. One final move from a man who had spent months watching them reveal exactly who they were. Afterward, no one challenged anything. Not because they accepted it. Because they couldn't afford not to. Years passed. Sometimes I struggled with the decision to cut my parents out completely. Sometimes I wondered whether I had done the right thing. Then I would look at Lily. I would see her laughing, confident, kind, unafraid. And I would remember the little girl holding that cruel birthday card. The little girl everyone expected to shrink, to doubt herself, to carry the same wounds I carried. Instead, she grew up surrounded by people who protected her, people who celebrated her, people who taught her that love was not something you earned by enduring cruelty. The maple tree grew taller every year. The wooden bench remained underneath it. And one day, when Lily was older, I finally opened the envelope Grandpa had given me. Inside was a single handwritten note. Just one sentence. "I couldn't protect you when you were little, Charlotte, but I could protect her." I cried harder than I had at his funeral. Because finally, I understood. The inheritance was never about money. It was never about the house, or the land, or the savings. Those were only tools. The real inheritance was dignity, safety, love, the freedom to grow up, knowing your worth. My parents spent their entire lives chasing money, and in the end, they lost everything. But Lily inherited something they never understood. A tree. A bench. A grandfather's faith in her. A future built on love instead of fear. And that was the one thing nobody could ever take away.